Right. Okay, so, I just back up to my slide. I think a lot of engineers here, so you probably are a fan of Star Trek, so you heard of this word. So my title today is to boldly go where no ISA has gone before. And I want to start with a brief history of RISC-V. I know Frankwell has talked about that before, but I kind of draw that in a time diagram, because as engineers, we like to draw diagrams. It all started back when at the Berkeley in 2010, and when Professor Krista, along with his PhD students, Yunsup and Andrew, they started working on RISC-V ISA. And then in 2011, that first spec was published. And in 2014, there was this famous paper written by Professor Krista and Dave, and on this title of instruction set should be free. If you haven't read that one, it's a very short read, but that kind of talk about our philosophy behind RISC-V, and I think it will be a worthwhile thing for you to read, and it also identified a few technical targets that we started when we work on RISC-V. And then in 2015, we had the RISC-V Foundations, and back in 2020, the RISC-V Foundation got reincorporated in Switzerland, and it's now what's called RISC-V International. And in 2023, we have surpassed 1 billion SoC shipped. As you know that within the SoC, there are many processors nowadays, and there are quite often there's a multiple RISC-V in there. I think one of the slides that Frankwell shared that NVIDIA themselves in 2024, I believe, they shipped 1 billion core. So obviously this 1 billion SoC has a lot more cores in there. And now the estimate for this year, I think, all the estimate, if you're only looking at less than 1 year, they tend to be very accurate, right? So the estimate for this year is 2 billion shipped. So we are coming a long way now. So what we believe for RISC-V, and we believe, we need to be able to access, it should be a free to access, free to innovate, and free to customize. So when we said, what about an open instruction set? Open instruction set means everybody who wants to access the instruction set, they're able to do so. And also, because it's open, you can innovate without any barriers. When you're trying to innovate and add things, quite often you got limited by all kind of IP restrictions and licensing restrictions, and we are not limiting you with that, with our open standards. And because of that, we build a very collaborative ecosystem, and with all those collaborations, we're able to innovate more. And that allows us to build a much wider range of applications. So, our advantage, I say it's a future-proof innovation because RISC-V instruction set is one of the newest instruction set architecture. And we are ready, not just for now, but for the next 50 years. And as it's an architecture, it is scalable and modular, so you can fit the RISC-V instruction set for any of the processor from small to big. And because we are also customizable and extensible, you can also add additional instruction sets, additional instructions, so that you can make it more efficient for your specific application, specific needs. And it is an open and global standards, means that we got supported across the globe. It is not a proprietary instruction that is only used by a few, and it is actually supported by the global community and also strengthened by the talents from across the world. And as we mentioned before, as a royalty-free instruction set, that free access allows to foster a very cost-effective innovation and a broader adoptions. So how have we done? We have a very rapid membership growth. It shows that a lot of people are interested, as we have seen that in the conference we have a membership, we have growth of conference attendance. We also have a growth of our official membership. And we have a cross-market deployment, and RISC-V processor has been used from the small chips to the bigger chips. And we continue to have technology innovation. So I have a few diagrams to show. So as you can see from the top diagram, this is our membership growth. And on the upper left-hand corner, this is the membership growth when we were still called RISC-V Foundations. And on the right-hand side are the membership growth since we become RISC-V International. As you can see, the membership growth is very rapid. And our share of SOC start has also been growing very rapidly. Now, on the lower right-hand corner, that graph shows the up and down kind of diagrams. So these are the additional features we've been adding to RISC-V instruction set, which is what we call extensions, right? These are the additional instructions. Now, as you know, that as engineers, we have tape-out schedules, and as the spec writers, you also have a target date. So from year to year, so the diagram may not show a very consistent one, but what you can see is we're still adding a lot of features, and it is not slowing down. So what could we become? I think a lot of people talk about AIs for this conference, but when we first started RISC-V, you can see a lot of the companies, they are on the vertical front. When I say vertical, that means you build your cores, you build your chip, and you may also build the application software along with it. And because of RISC-V's open architecture, it allows you to innovate and allows you to add your special sauce to your chip. So it fits very well for a vertical type of scenario. But it's also fit very well for AI and security. I think our previous two speakers are already talked about those two areas. One of the common theme about AI and security is AI. A lot of people want to show some differentiations in their algorithm and security. There's a lot of places you want to have some specialized security features so that you have your own sovereign control of your secure processors. And for RISC-V to be customizable and extensible, it fits those very well. Now, because of that, it also allows you to fit into a custom silicon environment. So there are people who are doing mass market merchant silicons, and there are also users of those merchant silicons. They want to have some special tweaks of it, and that becomes a custom silicon. Now, if you want to do a custom silicon with RISC-V's ISA, it makes it a lot easier to do that because of our customizable and extensible. So in the end, we can allow a kind of an end-to-end solution to allow the RISC-V to be applied to any market. And so how do we get there? I think for our RISC-V to be successful, one thing we want to keep on remembering is we need to stay customer focused. RISC-V came from a rich academic background. And engineers like to innovate, but the one thing we want to kind of remember is build what your customer need, not what your own heart desires, right? So ensure, like for example, our profile aligns with the customer requirement. And then, really prioritizing the customer feedback. Listen to what your customer is telling you, and especially listen when your customer complains. And that's a very important thing to do. And we need to do a frequent survey, and we need to ask the right questions during the survey. And then we create the solutions that the customer needs, and think a few steps ahead of your customer. When we build these things, think about if I add these special features to our ISA extensions, this will enable a new capability for our customers. And so here's one diagram. So for example, this is our RVA23. I think I'm not going to go into any details. I believe there is a more detailed presentation later in the day on this profile. And I just want to mention that our profile has the mandatory extensions, and there's localized options and development options. So we kind of categorize our new features into those kind of bundle, and within the bundle we have the separation of mandatory one versus developmental ones. That allows us to deploy our features more effectively. So one thing that I want to point out for this diagram, it looks like a simple diagram, but if you look at the chart, On the right-hand side is our membership. And this is a breakdown of our membership. On the right-hand side is the research institutions. As you can see, RISC-V membership is still very heavily dominated by research institutions, which is a good thing that we are still creating a lot of features. And the purple one is a software companies. And it's also very good because you need the software to help you deploy your hardware. But one thing you can look at, there's a lot of those areas of the low bars, and the one that we are a little bit concerned and we do want to improve on that is on the chip and system side, because there are a lot of companies out there, especially on the system side, right? And as I walk the COMPUTEX floor, I saw so many ODMs and OEMs, and we want those people to be our members because they are the users of RISC-V. So we want to recruit more user membership. And that comes to my next point is we want to be a developer-first mentality. When I say developer-first mentality is we want to make sure our spec is easy to use, it's clear, so you can actually read the spec and understand it. Because when we have the new people adopting these specs, they may not be your CPU expert, they may not be your PhD students, so you got to have the spec written in a way that those people are not familiar with the RISC-V CPU can still deploy that. And we also, in order to drive the adoption, we want to have a compliance certifications so that when people, one of the advantage of RISC-V is you have multi-source IP, but one of the challenge about multi-source IP is how do you ensure all those IP can work across the board, they can be compatible, right? So we want to drive a certification program. And along with that, you have your typical CPU needs of a golden model, an instruction set simulator, all these things to help ensure your compliance certification will work properly. And then also to make sure we have a backward compatibility versus legacy ISAs, so that to make sure our users, when they migrate, we make their life easier. The other point I want to point out, in the end, how do you sell your chip, how do you sell your CPU is the PPA matters. You got to have a good product, right? I do want to emphasize on the high performance side of the RISC-V. RISC-V is actually quite successful on the microcontroller side already. But on the high performance side, we are still just starting. The high performance implementation really attract a customer interest. And when you have a successful PPA and you start to lead, you have a lot more market visibility. Press coverage, like to emphasize on the high performance side, right? And enhancing performance and continuing enhancing the performance directly improve the customer satisfaction, and that will basically allow us to stand out in a crowded market. In conclusion, I want to say the RISC-V ISA as an architecture, it is a very well-designed architecture, and it's open access, has a lot of benefits that will benefit everybody. We are very well suited for the future of computing, including all applications that you can think of now and the applications you haven't been think of in future. And I want to conclude with this last slide is, we have limitless possibilities, and I want to borrow this line from the paper that I mentioned that was written by Professor Krista and Professor Dave, and that just as Linux has become the standards OS for most computing devices, we envision RISC-V becoming the standard ISA for all computing devices. And I welcome you to this conference, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you.